now.
I'm going to shut off some of my background stuff going on. All right. So this class slash roundtable is going to be very similar to the White Scarf Roundtable, and except it is focusing on the Academy. And why we are running them similarly is because they both are intertwined in the fencing community. So a lot of these will be similar types of things we're looking for, but we also want to be able to separate them. So if there's concerns for one group but not the other, we can better identify that to better fix those in the future as we're looking at where our problems are and how to address them. Additionally, it helps us see if we see problems within each single section. We know that those are repeating patterns, so something that needs to be addressed throughout the entire space. So that moving forward, it is going to seem very similar in some of these sections. You'll probably recognize some of the slides, and you'll recognize the presenters, which is Letia, myself, and Illaria, who may or may not be on that side of your screen. So with that notion, you guys should see the screen. Is everybody good? The slides? Awesome. So we're going to talk about our goals and motivations for running this in the first place. And that is to review communication and find all its strengths and weaknesses that we have in our community, to find better communication techniques where it is not working well. And also because we did previous roundtables about 1.5 years ago, and the most frequent request was better communication. So in order to find how to do better communication, we need to analyze how we communicate and look at where those breakdowns might be happening. So
start off, we're giving a definition for communication, to transmit information, thought, or feeling so that it is satisfactorily received and understood. So on this, to start with, we are trying to understand what we are trying to transmit and make sure that we are transmitting the things that are being requested and that people know where to go to find this information and move forward.
And we're specifically focusing on that part of the definition of transmission of information, not transmission, but we could be, to narrow the scope so it's easier to identify those breakdowns in how information is moving throughout the Academy desk bay. So just that narrow focus is going to help us figure that out.
So as an overview of what all we're trying to do, we're looking at communication. We would start by trying to demystify the Academy display, how it works, and then walk through some methods of communication and accessibility of communication.
So this first part of that, the define the Academy display, is there are several factors of the Academy that we want to make sure is clear and understood by everybody as we're going through this so that we can address them individually. One is joining the Academy, scholars, free scholars, and provost, and breaking that down into the information in that and where we may need to communicate better about that information.
So joining the Academy. Any fencer may join at any time. Any fencer may leave at any time. Fencers should know about the AED before being asked to join. If this isn't happening, we should be addressing it. And you can talk to your local White Scarf who is part of the Academy, or provost who's part of the Academy, or you can talk to anybody who is a member of the Academy. And then they should pass that up the chain so that we can have a discussion with whoever is missing that point. Joining the Academy is not required for the advancement of any rank within the royal ranks, like the White Scarf or the MOD. No fencer should be treated differently for being in or not in the AED. If this does happen, it should also be addressed.
So, becoming a scholar, what is required to do that? Any fencer who would like to join the Academy, the SFA, they then can join. They then would take the scholar's oath, which is written at the bottom here for your convenience. At that point, they may wear a blue scarf, and that helps identify that they have chosen to be in the Academy. And this can happen at any event where Academy members are present. So it does not need to happen at your first event you authorize. And as long as it is an event that Academy members are present, you can become a scholar. You can become a scholar of the Academy. There you go.
And we've included in that previous slide the scholar's oath for anybody who wants to look it over since we are posting the recording or considering posting the recording.
And that.
So becoming a free scholar. We have a couple of slides on this. This first one, what is looked for in a free scholar? A free scholar is often described as a journeyman position. It requires you to have a solid foundation for fighting, which will become the basis for becoming an advanced fighter, such as a provost in the academy. And you should be giving back to the community. This includes an array of potential contributions. It is not limited to marshalling. I know that that's a common statement that's being made, that you have to be a marshal to become a free scholar. You don't have to be. There's a lot of different ways to go about this. Marshalling is one of the most visually obvious ways to do this. Other options may require a little bit more communication about what you're doing and how well you're doing it. If it's not as easy to see by a number of different people, but that does not mean that they're any less good or beneficial to the community. Does every provost prioritize each value equally? No. We are individuals. We encourage these general values and we will weight them differently. So is that a terrible thing? No. It allows for a lot of different paths for people within the community. Some people are going to be stronger in different areas, and that is okay. How do you know when you're ready to become a free scholar? There are a couple different ways to do this. The scholar can approach a provost and ask if they are ready. Sometimes the answer is yes. Other times feedback may be given. And the other option is a provost may approach the scholar and ask if they are interested in becoming a free scholar.
And we're not distinguishing provosts and masters here because we have not changed the names of those necessarily within the academy. So you can ask any of those resources that are provost. Mm-hmm. So additionally, with becoming a free scholar, that someone you work close with as a scholar aiming to be a free scholar will have sponsors. And a sponsor is a provost who can identify a candidate whose fighting is at the provost, or I'm sorry, at the free scholar level, and their leadership is at the free scholar level. They're giving back to the community that we were looking at before. And the provost will either ask two other provosts if they agree that they are seeing the same promise in this scholar at this point in time. Or in some cases, they will ask the fencer themselves if they would like to identify two other sponsors in order to have the 3 sponsors needed for sponsoring the prize. The primary sponsor will then ask the goodwill of the order. And what that actually is the primary sponsor recommends the prospective free scholar to the provost. And if there are no concerns, they go ahead and plan a prize. However, if there are concerns, the concerns are discussed, and that allows the sponsors to take that information and give it back to the scholar in the best way that they know how, because the sponsors are typically somebody that's already working with that scholar. Once they've gained that information, they will then work with that scholar to try to address those concerns. And we'll bring that scholar back up to the group once those concerns are addressed, and then at that time a prize can be played.
So before taking the free scholar oath, the prize is played. The prize is a series of fights with challenges from a representative of each of the Academy de ASP ranks and all members of the free scholars in attendance. An optional possibility is to allow all comers as time allows. The challengers choose the format of the fight, and the free scholars is made regardless of the outcome of the set of fights. The free scholar then takes their free scholar's oath and may wear a yellow or gold scarf to symbolize that they are a free scholar. This is not, again, required to becoming a white scarf. This is the free scholar's oath here in case people would like to read it later on.
The next potential step would be becoming a provost. A provost has to be a member of the Academy or have a desire to join the Academy at the time. They have to be inducted to the Order of the White Scarf. Now, the White Scarf is a kingdom level grant award, and that is determined by the kingdom level polling order and the crown. It is not determined by the Academy itself. So once that has been determined that they are in the grant order of the White Scarf, they can raise to the level of provost. That also includes playing a prize, but unlike the Free Scholar Prize, it is the fellow provost that would fight them at that time to play the prize. But all the other similarities of the prize playing mentioned in the Free Scholar hold true. And also there is an additional provost oath, and that is right here.
So on the pink slides, this is where we're asking for your feedback. Were there any aspects of the current Academie d'Espée ranks and process that were clarified by this presentation?
And were there any further questions that we should address?
Feel free to come off mute and have a conversation with us.
Parthane, question. So on the provost slide, it says that you have to be a member of the Order of the White Scarf. What about someone who is a member of the Order of Defense who then wishes to join? Can they become a provost? Since there is no Master of Defense or Master rank within the Academy.
My assumption is that the master rank is intended to become there, and that they would kind of become a provost with there would be somebody that's part of the Academy at the very least, regardless of the naming convention, who could take on Free Scholars if they so chose.
I would assume that as well. That has not come up, so we do not have a precedent for that situation. But that seems like an easy choice to say, yes, that would be the case.
At the moment, all of the Masters of Defense are White Scarves. At some point, I expect that will change, but it will be very unusual that they're not.
At the moment, all of the Masters of Defense that are in Atlantia are Atlantean provosts, but there are Masters of Defense in other kingdoms, and that could be addressed at that time.
So we had intended when we wrote the Academy, these many aeons ago before there was time, that we had built the guild to provide for that guild structure. And frankly, when we started this 5 years ago, I think the intent on the premiers, including myself, was to somehow get to there from here. With the rapid induction that we've had of people and plucking people, just like when we started we had the first yellow scarves were made, the very first 4. I was there for that one also. We began plucking people upwards. There was a power vacuum upwards of people that were already heavily qualified, and that kind of stripped those ranks. We need to fix that, but we also need to define that. I, for one, would love to have a master's oath to the Academy that also supports my fealty to the crown.
That is a fantastic point. And I think that is slightly outside the scope of communicating how the methods are now, but that is certainly a fantastic point. And I am going to make sure to note that as an interesting thing that came out of this meeting.
Well, I think the only important thing about this to what is happening with the ADE right now is that it is exactly the same history. We knew the history and we repeated it. So the intent was to just give you guys that data to help the meeting along. I was not defining how it should be done, nor was I speaking for any other master. Just our intent, my intent.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Yes.
Regarding, in a similar vein of a master who moves in from out of kingdom, what if a GOA rapier, someone with a GOA rapier award from another kingdom that is not a white scarf kingdom moves into Atlantia, is there precedent for how that has been dealt with if they want to join the Academy?
Previously, it had been, my understanding is it had been that if they were part of the White Scarf Treaty, that was the case, because those were specifically on a more similar level. And not all kingdoms had AOAs, not all kingdoms had grants. So you got a little bit of change among that. And the White Scarf Treaty at the time had given a more base understanding that if you come from another kingdom, you retain that award. In other award structures, so if I'm a Pearl, if I move down to Anstiora, let's say, I do not retain a grant level award for Anstiora. I don't automatically get it. So the White Scarf Treaty made that go across the bar. I can get a grant level in all the other kingdoms and all the other awards. The White Scarf's the only one that had a treaty to make it even. And so that is how it has typically been done.
We have had instances where we have bronze rings come in, and oftentimes they will end up getting a white scarf, earning it within Atlantia again, kind of like we would see if Letia moved to Anstiora and went and tried to do art there. She would probably receive her GOA pretty quickly. People that come in with a bronze ring tend to earn their white scarf incredibly quickly, and then if they choose to join the Academy to Spay at that time, then they would also become a provost.
However, if I may, I'm sorry.
Let's start with Naveen.
It was more of a follow-up question of, has there been any instance of someone joining the Academy before, in kind of that same level, before receiving a white scarf in Atlantia? Like, has that happened? Is that just not? I'm seeing a lot of head shaking.
Yeah.
I did.
Huh?
Gunny did.
Gunny started.
Academy, and I think he just stays a blue scarf with his bronze ring, and then got his white scarf and became a provost at that time.
But I don't think anyone has gone from another kingdom that didn't have a white scarf treaty and become a provost immediately without that grant level.
I was wondering if there was like a free scholar intermedium type, like I was just wondering what had happened, honestly, like if it had happened and what had happened in that case.
Yeah, in Gunny's case, he just kept his blue scarf on and didn't worry about becoming a gold scarf. I think that's an individual's choice at that point. I think a lot of people just, if you've already earned a GOA level award, I think a lot of people probably don't go through the entire process again. But many of them do want to earn the white scarf again. So.
That makes sense. Giacomo is trying to talk, sorry.
So Naveen, well, I really wanted to compliment your question first off. And we had discussed stuff like this way back when. The idea is that if you're a grant level fighter, and eventually we all had this kind of thing about eventually having a master level of fighter, the Peerage Award. And there's a bunch of us on here. So I could see, because it's a guild structure and and everybody seems, and I kind of agree with it, separating it away from the award structure of the kingdom and having it as a guild within Atlantia. I could easily see a grant level fighter coming in from some other kingdom and challenging in to be a provost. And that would actually make the prize fights a little bit more telling. You run into an Atlantean provost, that's a lot like being a master of defense anywhere else. And free scholars, much like being a white scarf in any other kingdom. I actually made one of my kids wear that into the shark pit one day on their t-shirt to get a beer. We
like talking sass.
We do. But I would love to see now where we're building this into a real guild structure would be to have that challenge in. Come in and challenge into the Academy to Spay if you would like to, and make yourself that level if we're separating it out. If not, remember the White Scarf Treaty is defunct. Anstiora closed the order. They're not making more white scarves, is my understanding. And we still are making white scarves. we are white scarves, and our white scarves are pretty daggone hot. And of course, I have an emotional attachment to it. So I would love to see the Academy build itself into what it wants to be today, not the 1993 day, not the 2003 day, but the Academy today.
So as a quick time check, we are nearing halfway through the presentation, and we're about halfway through the time allotted. There are some more slides to get through if people are interested in doing that, and we can always come back around to these discussions.
Is everybody okay with moving on?
If there are
Brilliant.
any burning questions, I'm happy to entertain them first.
Yeah. We good? Cool.
Okay, communication methods. Current communication methods, we'd like to go through current communication methods, talk about equality or inequality of those methods, speed of change, and types of communication. This section is very similar to the previous roundtable meeting if you were in that, so you may see some very much similar items.
So communication methods. This is where looking at where you can get information about the Academy and where you can give information to the Academy. So where is it appropriate to address questions? Where is it appropriate to look for answers? Is kind of the gist of this, and looking at how those are how effective we are with those. And so if everybody could think right now of ways that you could connect with the Academy, or that you could get information about the Academy, and just shout out a few thoughts.
Academy website.
Academy website. Anybody else?
Academy Facebook page group.
Facebook page group.
Talking to people at events.
Event.
Then we have events again.
I won't have any of that negativity. None of it.
Fine.
Well, then we just have Facebook.
What was that?
Oh, go ahead, Naveen.
I was going to say, talking to people at practice, and there are still some virtual practices going on.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Moving right along. Moving right along. Yeah.
You can have one-on-one discussions on Facebook too.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I've had a half dozen people ask me questions in the last 2 weeks.
Perfect. So we hit, within this group, we hit most of the major items that we had found as well. So you hit the AED website, Facebook page, there's an Atlantia, Wikipedia, university classes such as this one, roundtables, practices, events you guys got, individual and group messaging, social gatherings, and individual contacts. So great job in helping to identify those resources.
And we just wanted to point out, looking at all of those resources, that not all methods are going to be the right method for each type of communication that you want to be had. That was not a good sentence, but pretend all those words were in the right order. Sometimes you need communication methods that are going to be more one-on-one private communication methods. Sometimes you want more of an announcement style. Some things you need to make permanent and official and need to be put on more official pages. And then some things are more ephemeral and it can have opinions in them and just are more conversational. So looking at the type of communication you are looking for and being mindful of where to look for that and where that could be presented can affect what we need to focus on having more of as far as methods.
Speed of change. So some sources are constantly being updated as people use them, like Facebook. Other styles, like websites, are more permanent styles of communication and are slower to be updated. On the other hand, the constantly changing content can contain errors or personal opinions that are led to believe as, or personal opinions that are stated as such, or that are lead to believe people to believe it is the opinion of the entire group. Whereas permanent content tends to be more vetted. It's not always more vetted, but it can be because it has a chance to go through a review process. So there are differences in that style. So I just wanted to give that as one example of the types of differences between the communication styles that Letia just mentioned.
Which has us looking at different types of communication. And since we are trying to find out where communication is falling down, we are looking at what types you would like to see more of, or what types there are perhaps too much of, and just really thinking about how we can enhance what we are doing for communication.
We're really looking to figure out what's working right now and what might be missing. I know in the previous session, Colette mentioned that she had a new type of meeting chat room that is available. And so that's one of the things that we might be missing right now. So anybody wants to come off mute and answer these questions, feel free.
No, I really enjoy and appreciate seeing all of these communication channels be like broken down. I think, and maybe it's perhaps in part because of the pandemic, and so we're all online more, but I'm almost feeling like communication channel fatigue. Like I don't know where to look to talk to people or to get information from. And there's new channels, and I think we're all trying to figure out what fits right, but it leaves me feeling a little less connected rather than more connected, because it's a lot of places to keep track of conversations.
So looking at maybe more potential official places to condense communications.
I don't really know what the right answer is. And I think it's one of those challenges of kind of like to the point of what was made in the white scarf session earlier today, of like different people communicate different ways. So like if you're trying to reach out to someone to have conversations, build relationships, maybe help them on their path, whatever it is, versus connecting into this community, different things work for different people. I don't think there's going to be a one size fits all for like the community in terms of how communication happens, but too many channels hurt instead of help, I think. I don't have an answer. I'm sorry.
No, this is exactly, even though it's not an answer, it's a very good question and a very good thing to think of. So thank you.
I want to chime in and agree with Marta on communication fatigue, both in terms of having a lot of channels and in terms of the speed of conversation. That is something that social media tends to exacerbate, that the assumption is that everybody is seeing the message ASAP. And if there's a lot of conversation on it, then those are the people who care and who want to participate, rather than understanding that algorithms definitely change who sees things and who doesn't, that time, different people are working different hours, and having the time to even like be on Facebook or even go look at a website. I think that in terms of communication, I think it would make sense to have a couple official channels, not one official channel. Having a couple official channels or a few official channels makes sense, so that if something needs to be communicated across the board, you could proliferate it across all of those channels at roughly the same time, so that, and then give time for people to have the personal time to look at something, to think about it, to have side discussions. I don't think side discussions are bad, as long as there's some recognition that there are unofficial and official discussions, or that you can tag in someone and be like, hey, we had this side discussion, I'm gonna throw it into this official channel, so that it's kind of collated somehow, but so that maybe it doesn't get lost. I'm just throwing out concepts here. But we're having a couple discussions in varying ways. I know for the type of stuff I do at work, when we're reaching out to communities, you'll have in-person roundtables, now they're doing virtual, and you'll send out flyers and emails, and you'll proliferate across a bunch of different communication venues, but you'll also do the same thing multiple times. So you'll have the same meeting multiple times, like you're doing with the roundtables kind of. so that people might not have time for that one meeting, but instead of having one meeting and then another one and then another one, it gives more time for people to have that emotional energy, to have that personal time in their life.
If I may, real quick, Navain, the stuff that you said was just so cool. So thank you. I remember an analog world where only James Bond had a cell phone in his original Aston Martin. And we did stuff like talk to each other face to face. This pandemic has really pushed people into needing to communicate. Also, because of what we are, a volunteer group dedicated to having fun with each other. The SCA isn't really about true history and that kind of stuff. We're really about the people that we're talking to right now, reaching out and touching fingers with everybody. People have their wants, people have their desires. People feel that they need to be communicated with in a specific way. And these platforms enhance every single individual's ability to push that platform for themselves. But it does very, very little to regulate it down to a more narrow aspect that's usable for a broad group of diverse people in diverse places with different things going on. And I would really love to see, and maybe I'm just paraphrasing and saying me too, and don't mean to, because you said it so well to begin with, but an old guy like me kind of needs that narrowed focus so I can really keep up with all of the information flow. A lot of smart people out of here, a lot of smart people doing a lot of good things, all complementary, but no focus. So did I me too, Navain?
I think a little bit, but I think you said it in a different way, so it's useful.
Apologies then.
Oh, no. This is a roundtable.
Yeah, it is a discussion-based group, so we're trying to start discussion, and we're having them. So we're going to move on unless anybody else has anything to add on this particular bit. All right. Because we're going to talk about accessibility, which I think is touching on what you guys have talked about a little bit. And now I don't remember. I think this is me talking, Martha. Good. Sorry. We tried to make a plan. So we want to also, with accessibility, how easy is it to find the and use the communication methods that you're talking about? So this moves right into what you were talking about of, knowing what exists, knowing what all out there exists, ability to find what exists. If you know it and you can't find it, it doesn't do any good. And the ease of use of that resource, which touches on that over stimulus of too many sources. So that's very, very relevant. Good segue, guys. I appreciate your segueing.
So first off, we wanted to talk about the knowledge of a communication resource. Did anybody learn about a new resource that we talked about today that might help fill a missing hole in communication? If not, was there a similar method that you might have been using previously outside of the unknown resource? And was there anything that would have helped you consider the particular resource as an option?
So I have a thought that I'm not sure if it directly relates to the question you're asking or not.
Go for it.
But so let me know. But in terms of like resources for communication, the Academie website I've known existed. Like I've known it exists for a while, and I looked at it a while ago, and the impression I got was that it has a bunch of old essays on it, and it's not like hugely being updated, that it's not really being used as a communication resource, that it's more being used as an archive. And my opinion, based on some experience about websites, is that websites are amazing communication hubs if you use them correctly. That I know that Academie website was built with a lot of care and love, but I'm not sure that it is the easiest one for anyone to volunteer to update. And I think that, at least if I remember correctly, and I could be completely wrong with this, in the sense that having a website that you could have like a web minister, a couple web ministers that anyone can volunteer. You don't have to know certain coding protocols in order to update the website, might help keep it as a communication hub rather than something that is a bit more like an archive. If that, I'm not sure it's entirely on task with what you're asking.
I think that's even if it's not on task, it's on task of things that we are hoping to talk about within this like group of slides. So totally relevant. That's actually something I noted. I went to that website and I was like, oh, this needs some updating and some more info. So I would totally agree with you on that. The current system for update is that it is a GitHub, which I believe is set up to be fairly easy for anyone to update if you know how to do that, and I do not. But go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in there because that was my recollection also, and I know about GitHub. I do a lot of website updating through things like WordPress and WordPress-esque sites that are really easy for anyone to pick up. GitHub, to me, I would have to go learn it. Despite every other tech ability I have, there's something new that I have to go learn in order to help with.
I'm kind of sitting in that same position. However, I don't know if that is a technical question that is very good, and I think we should explore and look at that more, and I don't have all the answers. But it's something certainly very good to bring up, and even if we want to leave it at GitHub, making a point of focus of this is how to connect for changes would be good as well. So I've got
We'll talk with Brian about that. We'll take that as an action from this meeting.
I've got a bunch of exclamation points happening on my notes around that. So I think it's a very good action. It's something that I had on my radar, and also knowing that GitHub is difficult for some people, including myself. I thought I might be alone. That might be a good thing to bring up. So thank you. No, that was great.
It's just something because I've offered to help update it before, and I was told, oh, it's GitHub, anybody can update it, and like sent the link, and I was like, I have no idea how to do this. I've used Google Sites, I've used WordPress, I've used HTML to some extent, and this I don't even know. So
I'm sorry?
I was just wondering if this was on Atlantian infrastructure, or if it was on something else that someone was paying for.
No, so let me do a brief overview of why we're on GitHub. One, it's free. Anyone who signs up for a GitHub account automatically gets, up to a reasonable amount free web hosting. So I believe Master Brian is graciously allowing us to use whatever web hosting he's been given through his account on GitHub. So that's part of why we're using it. The other part is that the structure on GitHub makes it very easy to distribute tasks through, a large number of people without them stepping over each other. And secondly, it makes it such that anyone could submit changes to the website without having to worry about breaking things, because they get filtered through like final approval. In this instance, I think Brian has a ability to give a thumbs up to any change that someone makes. So you don't have to worry if you are submitting changes and you're not super familiar with it. You can make the change you want, you can submit the change, and then that'll give the ability for someone more experienced and has a little more knowledge to do a little quick proofread over the change you're submitting before it goes live, so you don't have to worry about crashing anything.
And even just having a change, a link of this is where to send changes, so that you don't have to know GitHub, might be something that we can look as a simple add-on. So I will put that in my exclamation notes. But Naveen also is pointing up at me.
Oh no, there's a hand.
Yeah. No, I went pointing like you should talk now.
Oh yeah, sorry
for everyone.
I just didn't want to interrupt. Something even that's because it might also be like GitHub, when at least the link that I received when I asked about, hey, I can help with this, was so radically different than I guess it's not like it has kind of a background. It's not really a push button here type of website builder is what it seemed to me. So
Yeah.
things that are push button here is easier for a wider variety of people to volunteer to help with. But even if there's something that's just like, here is how you, this is where the changes are, here is how you submit changes, would I think be helpful rather than just, if somebody volunteers, you send them a link to GitHub and then it's up to them to, I guess what I'm saying is,
Yeah,
like, I understand
exactly.
like that some cases people might not have the time to be like, here's a whole tutorial for something that you've never had to learn before. And I don't want to ask someone to do that. But just, there's various levels of accessibility of website builders.
So I think that is something really good to look into. There seems like a lot of potential solving able to be done with that problem. And I'm pushing it a little because we only have 15 more minutes. So I want to get, no, you're fine. I think this was a really, really good point. And I think there's a lot of directions for solutions with this point. So I want to take it as this is a problem with lots of directions to discuss, and take it as a breakaway point and work on discussing it later, and find a good solution that works, because that's a great point. So, and we are talking, is this me or you? I've now lost it because, okay. So we, finding communication resources is something we want to talk about. Like, is the website findable? And where did you look for the resource? So clearly, if you're looking for a resource of an information and it's only an archive, but it should be a website, that's part of this problem. So that's exactly spot on with what you were talking about. And did you end your search at a different resource than the one you wanted to find that information? Because having the right information where you want to look is certainly important of being able to find your communication. So was it easy to find? Did it meet your needs? And what information was still unmet? So if there's any information about the Academy and the structure that you feel is still unmet that we need to make sure is on a resource, let us know. Now, this is a question. This is the participation part. Still, thoughts? That's a good point, Lloyd. And maybe having an place to aggregate the different websites, which was actually a point made in the White Scarf one, is that there's so many informations and it's spread out, and it also leads to Marta's point that, you know, having everything in one site where it's easy to find is really good. But I'll put that because that's a really good point.
For those that couldn't hear what Lloyd said, another source of communication that we might not have caught was individual people's websites.
And that was in the chat. Yeah.
Right. So I've tried to link to some of those on the wiki and leave space for other people to add their own links to their own sites that have similar pontifications. But, you know, that's the place to me, that's the place to put things that are my own opinion, that I explain how I think things work, rather than, you know, having to sanitize it and make it more generic to put it on the Academy page.
Makes sense.
Really good point. And
There's
also,
a place for both.
Yeah.
I love the idea of having links to people's blogs on the Academy site. I know there's a list of like current white scarves and free scholars, et cetera. I think that's on the Academy site, or it's at least attempting to be an updated list.
Mm-hmm.
To be perfectly honest, I have maybe once ever looked at the Atlantean wiki. It's just too many places to look for things. There's a Atlantean website and a wiki, and this, like Marta was saying about fatigue, and that was ages ago. If I want information about the Academy, I'm going to go to the Academy Facebook page or maybe to the Academy website. So I would love, I think having links to blogs would be awesome on the Academy site. One thing that I would honestly love for the, to be a goal for the Academy site is for white scarves to have like a little 3 to 5 sentence bio about themselves that for free scholars to help create communication networks with scholars. So free scholars are kind of the intermediary, and we know white scarves and mods and are supposed to be helping our scholars in order to be like, hey, this person I think would be a really great match for you to learn from. And we could use a mini like 3 to 5 by, like, hey, here's where you can find out more about them without having to just like cold call them effectively.
Yeah.
That it creates a little more of a networking opportunity. And I think the AdE website would be a perfect place to have just, you know, like not a long bio, like 3 to 5 sentences, in addition to, because not everybody has a blog. So like if people want to link their blogs, that's great. But if they don't or don't have one, then having a little 3 to 5 sentence bio is something that I would love to see.
That is awesome. I love that idea. I think that's a really great add-on. I could say great 3 more times and make that sentence truly convoluted. So I think I'm going to move along, but I did note all of those things because I really like the idea of having things in a condensed place, and even if it's doubled up.
So this one, I think Naveen's already hit on a good bit, ease of use. I think that some of these resources are not as easy to use as others or easy to update as others. And that has been something that we've touched on a good bit. So we may be able to move on from this one pretty quickly unless people had more commentary on it, which we'd be happy to take.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Improvement of content, which also goes back to a lot of the things we just said. Good job, Naveen. And also all the comments. Giacomo did lots of good comments too, and Lloyd too. But what are there resources that could be more useful if updated? Yeah, that website could be way more useful if updated. If so, which ones? The wiki, keeping that updated potentially. So just making sure, you know, we've identified those 2. Are there any other ones that you can think of that would be more useful if updated, other than the website and potentially the wiki?
Yeah, this might be a bit exotic, but please, folks, understand what I am and that I do the emergency preparedness thing. You are going to have a return to normal sometime soon, probably within the next 6 to 9 months. That return to normal is going to pull us away from the computers, pull us away from the behaviors that we're going through right now, and return us to where we're looking at each other in the face. 2 things are probably going to be generated from that in big umbrellas. 1, communication vacuum, where a lot of this information disappears off of the internet and is now being said face-to-face at events. So people are still going to have the same idea that it's available to everybody. The other thing is we're going to see a lot more of this at events. Okay? And we probably don't want to see as much of this at events. So in a return to normal, what our emergency management looks like for the ADE and how we're going to do these things in the future, because people are still going to sit back down at their desk and click that button. So might be something to consider. Out.
Yeah, definitely. So making sure that, and just making sure I had mentioned that we're also looking for if content is confusing and just not out to date. Anything that, yeah.
Well, Lisa said in the chat, summaries after University Roundtable Discord chats have been very helpful, she says. I wanted to also say, I just did a really quick look on my phone, and the Academie Display Facebook group does not seem to have an easy to find link to the Academie website, that having interconnected methods of communication so that all the places link to each other, or just, you know, have a list of link, an announcement or whatever, would make it easier, I think.
Great, yeah. Cool. I can definitely look, some of those are super easy changes. Thank you.
So thinking about the content questions you may still have regarding the Academie Display, what would be your preferred communication method and why?
SBA events.
Because I miss them so bad.
Outside of events, I think the website
Mhm.
would be my preferred method of communication for all major things. Anything that you want the community at large to be able to weigh in on. But I would also then want to feel like I would go to the website in order to learn about things like that. So
What would inspire you other than it being a useful website and out an archive?
honestly, even just like throwing a link on the Facebook group, right? Being like, hey, we posted this on the website, here's the link.
Mhm.
So that all methods of so that the other methods of communication become sometimes announcement methods rather than communication methods. That sure, things can be discussed there, but the main announcement funnels towards that website.
It would be really cool if when someone gets authorized, they get a business card that points them to resources. So at their own pace, they can learn about it as a resource.
Yeah, I like that.
I was also thinking once we do get back to reality, having mixers with Academy would be nice to have again. We used to do some meet and beats, and I really enjoyed doing those. But even if we did something at Ruby where the Academy hosted like a ice cream social or a hangout time so that you could meet people outside of your social circle, that'd be nice.
Academy tacos.
I would love to see us all throw our pavilions up in a tight little area, our field pavilions, our whatever dining flies, and all of us sit together and see the Academy banners and do the Academy things together.
Living.
Giacomo's idea is awesome, but also for events, you have to remember that there are also local groups putting up independent pavilions and day shades. So there's some, I think, push-pull happening sometimes, especially at events. I love the idea of a social because it kind of removes that, because you can be like, hey, I'm going to this Academy thing, and not be like, all the activities are happening all at the same time, and sometimes you have to choose, and like maybe I want to do Bardic instead of Rapier, and I have to make that choice. But a social kind of creates that, and rather than having, I have mixed feelings about having singular Academy day shades as opposed to local chapter day shades. I'm actually teaching a class next called Rise of the Rock Stars, which some of you may have heard of. And that's how to make your local group more integrated. So that kind of is like a little bit of an opposing concept.
I will agree as Baroness the same way, because a lot of times it's very difficult to build a baronial group if everybody has their own individual group that they're belonging to and are separating out throughout the day.
And
Even an individual group for fencers is a large group.
So we have always had in Atlantia the problem between household, individual groups. The archers have to be 90 degrees out of everybody from everywhere. Horses can't be in the same place because they can step on somebody. I guess what I kind of meant was, and I still kind of mean it. It kind of meets what you say, Navain, but maybe talking to autocrats where we can throw up our dining flies around the field, socialize people, and I'm also thinking as of a peer that you come to my banner, there's largesse, there's water, there's food, there's a place for you to sit and rest. So I guess that's what I was thinking. So kind of agreeing with you, but adding in that we could kind of be clumped together.
I wonder if we could make like small Academy banners that could be hung up at any personal pavilion that's open to members of the Academy coming up and sharing in largesse. And
I love that idea.
When Gregoire registered the Academy Display badge, it was released to every rapier fighter in the kingdom. So any rapier fighter that's a member of the ADE can use the badge without let.
We can have Academy ANS Day to make banners.
I think that sounds really cool.
Yeah, it does.
And I really like the conversation that we're having right now, by the way, because we have multiple people representative of different like quarters and groups and organizations where the academy kind of goes across them. And I think that this kind of accessibility touches on some of the challenges we heard highlighted in the white scarf table, where they were talking about the challenges of clicks. And like, as someone who's head of a rapier household, that household also doesn't have to have physical representation at every event. Like, part of the reason why Condottieri generally doesn't is because we have so many friends in so many places that why would we? Like, we'd much rather partner with and work with other groups and other friends to help make that cross-pollination and interaction happen at events. So I would love to actually see more conversation like this where we say, how do we engineer events and, you know, the dynamics that can enable people to have that conversation and interaction and like build more of a network of community, instead of just putting all effort into one pocket. Like, you're never going to hear me say only our household or only the academy, right? Like, we are actually all just friends first, and so enabling that to happen is really nice. So I just wanted to say I absolutely love this conversation.
So
That's a good, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say real quick, we've actually hit the 4 o'clock limit for the university class, but I mean, this is up to Letia. Technically, we're entering into a 30-minute break, so if she wants to keep the ball rolling and you guys don't feel like taking a break.
I'm thinking this conversation's going great, and I'm down with keeping the ball rolling. I was just going to mention that we are at that time, but yeah, if everybody else is welcome to stay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I do have to leave soon because I want to check things before I teach in half an hour. But I wanted to bounce off of what Marta said about kind of day shade or community and friends. That speaking as somebody who has a very large rapier contingent within my local group, and is trying to also create like an interconnected local group. There have been some comments occasionally that rapier folks, when they show up to our practice, are more standoffish rather than talking with the ANS folks, and because we do have an integrated practice. Overall, so we have ANS, you all probably know this already, but it's recorded. So we have ANS and we have Armored and we have Rapier all at our practice. Thinking of and we've been working on how to kind of keep that integration and not have cliques formed by disciplines even within our local group. I really like going back to Linhart's suggestion about the banners. I really like having mini banners at like local group day shades. You could be like, hey, here's a friendly place, with the understanding that not only rapier fighters will be under that day shade, and then that also creates an integration. And well, I believe there is a strong integration of the rapier community with other disciplines, but it creates a visibility of integration that is not necessarily visible to everybody at this point, even if I believe it actually does exist.
I really appreciate that phrasing change there, because I agree with you, and I agree that the visibility is incredibly important from that perspective as well.
I think it also will help create some connection of visibility that everything is connected for some of the smaller. So I came from North Carolina with Windmaster's Hill, and we had more of a smaller baronial kind of group there, and having something connecting us to the larger rapier community like that would be lovely as well. So it works for groups that are doing well at being large, but also would work really well for groups that are a little on the smaller side and needing to feel that connection, I think.
The one thing I would bring up that I would worry about a little bit from this kind of a sense is, like, let's say we set out a date board and go ahead and put up this flag. Is it okay for anybody within the rapier community to come and partake of that date board? Are there bounds, are there rules, are there expectations that are set up there that might need to be explicitly rather than implicitly stated?
I think that's a really good point.
This is a great point, and frankly, gardeners went through it years ago. First off, everybody thought gardeners was a household, when we're actually just in an autonomous collective that takes it in turn once a week to be somebody who was there, and never really became a household, what people thought of as a household. We were told specifically, we would set out a day board. Sandy would throw out a huge amount of food on a table, do wonderful things, and people would tell us, well, they didn't feel that they were welcome under our pavilions because, well, you guys just do it so right. We didn't want to do it wrong. And you guys just, and because you look so good. And here's the thing about being a peer in the SCA. I provide large S as befits my station. I can speak to my students. One of them is here. They provide large S as befits their peer station. So if they can give a nickel, I expect them to give a nickel or nothing more if they can't. And we have to get the people in the SCA to understand that the 100,000 of us that play SCA worldwide are friends. There's only 100,000 of us. Come and enjoy my shade with me, and I will give you cold water. And later, when we are no longer on the field, probably something that tastes a whole lot better in the neighborhood of a whiskey that is legal to date in the entire United States. Because you're my friends. I care about you.
But not everybody can afford the cost of a day board to put out for the whole world.
But that,
bouncing up. Oh, I just want to bounce off what Illaria was saying, that I think that might be something that is actually good for the website to have a use for communication, right? Because if you put out a flag or put out a heraldry, that can mean almost anything in the SCA. It means like this, I'm part of this, but it doesn't necessarily mean that other people, like it's kind of unclear. Like there's a lot of different uses for flags. So maybe that's something that can go up on the website. If you see the Academy flag being flown at a day shade, it means that you can go over and introduce yourself, and those people will know, I don't know, like basically like we are friendly rather than like come eat all of our stuff. And then because you can be invited in then, but it's basically a door rather than a larger invitation. Like it's like a, hey, come knock on our door type of invitation maybe. And but that we can explain that using like a communication hub.
I think it's a really good point, especially because most people who are entering into the Academy and need that welcomeness and support structure are new, oftentimes new to the SCA too. And I know most of us have been in the SCA a really long time, but to a newcomer, they don't know to just walk up and say hail camp. They don't know that they can just walk up and say hello to someone from a rapier perspective, that they have something to connect with someone else who also has a sword in their hand. And the Academy can make that easier for someone who is new. So.
Well,
it's a doormat to the door that lets you in. Less than saying it's a door, not a wall. It's the welcome doormat.
Yeah.
That
like
says
that.
come knock on the door. So, yeah.
Well, and frankly, that was.
Have that. Sorry.
Go ahead, Neve.
Oh, okay.
Find doormats and put them in front of tents.
Which is the place to have that defined and explained kind of, I think, connects to what we're talking about in terms of like communication structures, and that someone somewhere has to explain that to you.
Mm-hmm.
So the place to have that explained, I think, would be a central website hub that if everybody gets a business card when they are new and they have resources they can on that business card, then that would be the main resource is the website. They know to go and like, you know, there's a little about us, what these symbols mean page that helps kind of facilitate that communication network.
Well, one of the things that's been noticed outside of the rapier community in Greater Atlantia is that for the past decade or so, rapier has dropped off doing that really well, where we used to do that very, very well. And somewhere we turned the corner of being further away from Atlantia, being Atlantean, but kind of like this instead of square to it. When I would bring new people to an event, I stayed with them the whole day. introduced them to people, explained what this belt meant, explained what that hat meant, and explained and took them in hand, often giving them places to camp inside my own tent. And we just don't have that chaperonage and chatelainage within Atlantean Rapier as much as we used to. And I know that this is a broad brush, please forgive me, but the idea behind the Academy was, when we started it years ago, was we weren't central as much to SCA. One of the things that we did, and the Dukes all know it now, so I'm not talking shit, was we took over the kingdom by filling up all of the offices as rapiers. Michael of Bedford in one of his reigns looked around and said, I can't run this kingdom without the Atlantean rapier, period. So in saying positive there, not only do we need the website that Navain has talked about and Letia has talked about, but we need to understand that all of us are chaperones. And the rush to get on the field, the rush to get into a black sword tourney, the rush to be the only way that we can have any kind of level of notice of our skill is on somebody's spreadsheet somewhere. And please understand that I'm saying that fairly pejoratively, is there's a human element to what we do. And we need to remember that humanity. We really need, and some of you guys here have helped me with that, and now I'm just putting it back up there as a big billboard.
I think that's a great point, but on that note, I have to go. This is a lovely discussion. Thank you so much.
This was great. Thank you for being here, Navain. You added a lot to the discussion today, for sure.
So, Letia, do you want to keep going the last 2 slides?
Yeah, I think there's last one slide.
Guys, I'm popping out. See you on the
Is this feedback for us and questions and concerns? Bye, Jimmy.
So, especially for the recording, here are the email addresses for your 2 hosts, Letia and Illaria.
So, any other questions, comments, thoughts, concerns? I think if that wraps it up, I am going to go ahead and hop off and make sure that the Zoom is up and running for the next session. So thank you everybody for your input today. And I think we got a lot of interesting points that have been thoroughly thought of before. So thank you, everybody.
Okay, with that, I can stop the recording.